was a civilization in a decline, not unlike our own. The economy was deteriorating. The helpless were being destroyed by the warlike. The rich lived on the backs of the poor. The powerful few made decisions that profited them, but plunged the powerless, many into continual chaos. The empire expended more and more of its resources on the militarism designed to maintain a system that, strained from within and threatened from without, was already long dead. It is an environment like that in which Benedict of Nursia flung a rule for privileged Roman citizens, calling for humility, a proper sense of self in a universe of wonders. When we make ourselves God, no one in the world is safe in our presence. Humility, in other words, is the basis for right relationships in life. Later centuries distorted the notion and confused the concept of humility with lack of self-esteem, and substituted the warped and useless practice of humiliations for the idea of humility. Eventually, the thought of humility was rejected out of hand, and we have been left as a civilization to stew in the consequences of our arrogance. Benedict's Magna Carta of humility directs us to begin the spiritual life by knowing our place in the universe, our connectedness, our dependence on God for the little greatness we have. Anything else, he said, is to find ourselves in the position of a weaned child on its mother's lap, cut off from nourishment, puny, helpless, however grandiose our images of ourselves, and left without the resources necessary to grow in the Spirit of God. No infant child is independent of its mother, weaned or not. No spiritual maturity can be achieved independent of a sense of God's role in our development.
Accordingly, if we want to reach the highest summit of humility, if we desire to attain speedily that exaltation in heaven to which we climb by the humility of this present life, then by our ascending actions, we must set up that ladder on which Jacob in a dream saw angels descending and ascending. Genesis 28:12. Without doubt, this descent and ascent can signify only that we descend by exaltation and ascend by humility. Now the ladder erected is our life on earth, and if we humble our hearts, God will raise it to heaven. We may call our body and soul the sides of this ladder, into which our divine vocation has fitted the various steps of humility and discipline as we ascend.
Jacob's ladder is a reoccurring image of spiritual progress in classic spiritual literature, as clear in meaning to its time as the concept of the spiritual journey, for instance, would be to a later age. It connected heaven and earth. It was the process by which the soul saw and touched and climbed and clung to the presence of God in life, whose angels descended and ascended, in an attempt to bring God down and raise us up. That ladder, that precariously balanced pathway to the invisible God, Benedict says, is the integration of body and soul. One without the other, it seems, will not do. Dualism is a hoax. Just as false, though, is the idea that getting ahead and being on top are marks of real human achievement. Benedict says that in the spiritual life, up is down and down is up. We descend by exaltation and we ascend by humility. The goals and values of the spiritual life, in other words, are just plain different from the goals and values we've been taught by the world around us. Winning, owning, having, consuming, and controlling are not the high posts of the spiritual life. And this is the basis for social revolution in the modern world.
Yeah. So what do y'all think?
He's right.
That's radical.
Yeah, it's pretty radical, isn't it?
It is.
No, seriously though, I mean, he's right that the sense of humility is who you truly are, right? It's not boasting, and it's not also a humiliation. It's just like your truest self. And that's like just pure honesty, and in a sense where it doesn't matter whether you win or you lose or you this and that. It's just like, where am I at with my relationship with others and my relationship with God, and and my own self. And if you really, if C.S. Lewis says, it's like, he always says, it's like, isn't it so nice when you can shed off all of those frivolous clothes and take off all the makeup, and just bare yourself and just be this, humble who you are. Yeah, I'm not good at this. Or yes, I'm okay at that. I just think it's so essential.
I think the chapters on humility with Joan's help has helped me try to live differently. I'll put it that way. The most out of Benedict's rule. Really, it means a lot to me.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to welcome, okay, I'm going to welcome Vicki Joy. She's already here. I'm glad that we've gotten there. And she's our speaker for today, our presenter. Vicki Joy, how long have you been a member of Community of Hope? I know it was a long time ago that you did that.
My goodness, I think it was probably 2004. It was some of the best training that I received as in all of my chaplaincy training. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Did you get to know Helen?
Who?
Helen Appleberg, did you get to know her at all?
I don't think so. Was she there at Grace?
No, Helen Appleberg, the one that started Community
Oh,
of
no,
Hope.
no. No, I didn't.
Oh.
Yeah.
We got to meet her at a couple of conferences, and she's just a wonderful person.
Nice. Well, Pat, should I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. Let's take it away.
Well, I've just come from a Zoom meeting with about 20 other people in my continuing education as a spiritual director. And they were from all over the country. And a Jesuit priest from Montserrat Jesuit Retreat House up in Dallas was the fellow who was facilitating the meeting. And guess what it was in essence about? Pastoral identity. Isn't that funny, huh? So I don't know how much you know about me. Real quickly, I'll give you just kind of a brief overview. I'm a board certified chaplain and an ordained interfaith minister with a master's degree in pastoral ministry from the Episcopal Seminary of the Southwest in Austin. I retired from hospital chaplaincy in 2015. I was the sole chaplain at Baylor Scott and White Medical Center in Round Rock for about 10 years. As a spiritual director, I practice from my home, and I also speak publicly on Christian meditation, otherwise known as centering prayer. And the spiritual practice of practicing the presence of God, who's always with us. My husband and I have been married for 50 years, coming up in October. I live in Salado. We're the parents of 5 children and grandparents of 9. I love to bake bread, sourdough bread. Been doing that since I retired. Just pulled a batch of yummy loaves out of the oven last night. And I've got 2 dogs, Sawyer and Cullen, both rescues, both mutts, and delightful. You know, we're so used to having a bunch of noise and and family around that when they all grew up and left, we had to get dogs. So as a board certified chaplain, I went through several years of education and 6 units of supervised clinical pastoral education. And as I said, the Community of Hope training is some of the best training that I went through in those years at 2 seminaries and the clinical pastoral education residency in a hospital. So this training is no trivial pursuit. It's good stuff. And it's the stuff that leads to effective ministry. It's not just the training, but it's how you integrate it into your life. So I encourage you to really take it to heart. Speaking of training and formation, that's what will make you good chaplains, good lay chaplains. The formation is how you practice this training and how you let this training, the Benedictine training, the training from Community of Hope, how you let it inform your life and your relationships. So this section of your Community of Hope training is about pastoral identity. If as believers we are called to serve, to live holy lives, growing steadily in grace and spreading delight and divine love in the world, then why is it so important that we have something called pastoral identity? So raise your hands, or maybe, raise your hands, maybe just unmute yourself and kind of take turns. Why is it so important that we have something called pastoral identity?
Is it maybe a way that we ground ourselves in our relationship? We have to kind of, when we're getting a bead on our relationship with God and our relationship with others, I think it's important to know where we are.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? How is pastoral identity different from your own identity?
Aren't they kind of combined? I mean, how do you separate them?
Okay, good thought. Anybody else? Come on, speak up. How is pastoral identity different from your own identity?
I don't know that you can separate them. I mean, I think they have to be the same.
I don't know if you should separate them.
Yeah. Okay.
Because, maybe you said, maybe you allow Christ to come and work through you, but hopefully you're not doing that on a pastoral level, separate from your regular life.
Okay, good. Did you have a pastoral identity before you started this training?
Yes.
And what was that? Can you explain that identity?
For me, I've always known that people tended to come to me with their issues as far back as the 1980s and the 70s. And it's taken me a long time to understand that that's who I am. So.
Well, and Patricia, if I were to build on that thought, I was thinking to myself, there's a level of self-awareness, and I can be intentional and be self-aware and know my pastoral identity. And for myself, a lot of it is seeing Christ in others and being Christ for others. But I also know that when I'm not self-aware, I can be a jerk just like every other human being. And that's not my pastoral identity. So
Yes.
True.
Great. Okay. So good thoughts. Good thoughts. So it involves recognition of who you are called to be, who you are becoming, and holding on to it when you're in Walmart or in HEB, when you're smiling behind the mask. You know, can people see your eyes, the smile behind your mask? Can you speak kindly to the person who bags your groceries or to the cashier? So that is being pastoral. It's causing your calling to inform your life in all of the areas that you function in. The other thing is you're going public with this ministry, with this training. You will have a ceremony at the end of this training, and you'll be commissioned and named as lay ministers in your church and in your community. And you'll be sent out as representatives of Christ and your church to offer your compassionate presence to the complex lives of others. So in a sense, your own intention to be called ministers is going to be affirmed publicly, and that makes it different. You're being called as a public servant and being recognized as a public servant. Yes, Daria.
It's Starla.
Starla.
I would argue though, if you don't, that transformation has to happen privately as well as publicly, because people are really good at detecting when you're being fake.
Oh yeah.
And they're really good at when they detect that like you are listening to them and being comforting, but you're not serious and authentic and honest.
Oh yes, absolutely. And that's part of what this training and formation is about, is so that you recognize and do that private work in your studies, in your practice at Walmart and HEB and the library and wherever else, in your own homes with the people that you normally relate to. Recognizing that calling privately is super important. And that's a nice segue into where we're going next. It is important for you to spend time reflecting on yourself and how yourself will reflect your relationship with God and the church. So in your reading in this unit, there were some questions, and you can go back and reflect on these questions. I just want to bring them up again. How do you imagine God to be, especially in times of trial? How do you handle uncertainty and fear when you're going through a hard time? You personally. Spend time answering those questions. Get your journal out and answer. How do I handle uncertainty and fear when I am going through a hard time? How have I done it in the past? How do I do it now? Am I happy with how I do it? How do you wish to be accompanied when you feel like God isn't listening to you? It's important to reflect on those things and get a good bead on those things privately, because when you go public, when you show up at that person's doorstep, when you've been sent out by the church and you knock at the door, that self that you've spent time with, that you've reflected with, is the one that's going to be showing up to those people who need your presence when they are in a time of trial. So I'd like you to take a few moments right now. I'm going to give you 5 minutes on several different exercises. I hope you have some pen and paper available that you can do some writing. And if not, you can use a few minutes, well, a minute or so of your time to get that gathered to respond to this journal prompt. Who am I? Think of all the roles that you play or have played, the titles you hold now, the titles that you have held. You might want to list things that you can't change about yourself, such as where you were born, into what family, your things that you've done, your personality traits, career changes, all of those little things that you think of yourself as being and being formed by. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Do you have any questions about that? Okay. Okay. If you're not quite done, save yourself some space and we'll go on to the next question, journal prompt. Take a few moments, another 5 minutes, to think of all the things that others have said about you, past and present. These things are not going to be shared. This is purely for your private reflection. So good things, bad things. What have other people said about you? Okay. Ready for the next one? The next question deals with knowing yourself as who you are not. So it's another way of knowing. What roles don't you play? So for instance, if you are not a priest, then put, I am not a priest. Are you a liar? Are you a gossiper? What behaviors and habits don't you have, both positive and negative? So know yourself as who you are not. I'll give you 5 minutes again. Okay, just two more questions. Now take some time to answer the same about God. Who do you say God is? Think back on how you've imagined or experienced God to be over the years of relationship. And then write those things down. Who do you say God is? 5 minutes. Okay, one more. Pastoral identity formation has to do with all of those things. Your I ams, your I am nots, the you are statements, the who is God question. But the very foundation of your I amness must be built on who does God say I am? Who does God say I am? Okay, thank you for that. I'm looking. I put the questions in the chat in case you missed any of them? You need to reflect on them some more. Well, pastoral identity means growing into or even putting on a new way of being and serving. A new way of thinking of yourself, maybe, not as being better, but as our readings this morning on humility stated so lovely. Humility is honesty. Being empowered and equipped and vulnerable to follow a call. It means putting your whole self into living and practicing compassion and kindness and humility and quiet strength and discipline. I'd like to read something from Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 through 17, and this is the Message translation. You're done with that old life. Now you're dressed in a new wardrobe. Every item of your new way of life is custom made by the Creator with His label on it. All the old fashions are now obsolete. Words like Jewish or non-Jewish, religious or irreligious, insider and outsider, uncivilized and uncouth, slave and free, those all mean nothing. From now on, everyone is defined by Christ. Everyone is included in Christ. So chosen by God for this new life of love, dress in the wardrobe God picked out for you. Compassion, kindness, humility, quiet strength, discipline. Be even-tempered, content with second place, quick to forgive an offense. Forgive as quickly and completely as the Master forgives you. And regardless of whatever else you put on, wear love. It is your basic all-purpose garment. Never be without it. Let the peace of Christ keep you in tune with each other, in step with each other. None of this going off and doing your own thing. And cultivate thankfulness. Let the word of Christ, the message, have the run of the house. Give it plenty of room in your lives. Instruct and direct one another using good common sense. And sing your hearts out to God. Let every detail in your lives, your words, your actions, whatever, be done in the name of the Master Jesus, thanking God the Father every step of the way. That very last line, everything you do, be done in the name of the Master. What does that mean? In the name of means in the spirit of, or with the nature of. When my little ones were little, they would play cops and robbers. And I remember the kids running around and going, "Stop in the name of the law." That just means I carry an authority of another one. I carry the authority, I carry the nature of this one that is above and beyond and behind me. And so as you go out, you carry the nature. You wear the nature of the one who sends you out. Lastly, I'd like to tell you a story that I heard in seminary that has stuck with me for a long, long time. It's a story that one of my professors told, and we were in a counseling class. And above and beyond his role of professor at the seminary, he was a rancher. And his story went like this. when he went out to survey his herd, he'd scan them with a wide scan. His eyes would just travel all over the fields. He was looking for one or two that looked like they needed a little more attention than he could give them as they grazed. And so if his eyes stopped on one that looked a little sickly or just a little off, he'd bring it into a special pen near his house so he could closely observe it for special tending. If the cow didn't get better with special food and extra tending, he'd call someone like a vet, more qualified to make changes to mend. In other words, he knew his skill level. He knew what he was, and he knew what he was not. He knew his skills as well as his limits. And he knew he was a good tender, but not qualified to mend. As a Community of Hope chaplain, as a pastoral visitor, the very best thing that you can do for a person is to sit and listen, tending them, knowing that it's appropriate for them to not feel all right, and not expecting them to be polite or eager to see you, to ask lots of permission. Your visit is about being sensitive to whether it's okay to ask specific questions, whether they're appropriate and relevant questions because you care, and knowing not to ask if you're just curious. Pastoral visitors practice saying very simply, yes, tell me about it. That must be so hard. Or maybe not saying a word, just being there. A huge part of what you will feel as you tend to someone is helplessness. Have you ever felt the helplessness that, you go out, you hear it on the news, there's nothing you can do about some of this stuff. You just feel helpless. And yet when that person is right there in the room with you, you tend to go into fixing mode, right? You want to fix it. Feel the helplessness that you're feeling as an intuition into what they may be feeling. If they're in crisis, it's very, very appropriate for them to feel helpless. And you might even say, boy, if I were in your shoes, I would feel really helpless. Does that sound like maybe what you're going through? Feeling with someone is called compassion. And it also describes a function of intercessory prayer. Bearing with and feeling with one another gives you clues about what you might want to pray for the person or with the person. And as a servant of Christ, as you're tending, you might want to ask, so would you like to have a prayer? And if they say yes, then giving them the opportunity to say what they'd like to pray about. So good stuff. Y'all are getting good training, getting to know yourselves, getting ready to go out into the world, or maybe continuing to go out into the world. as pastors. Do you have any questions or comments? You can just unmute yourself if you'd like. Yes. Can you unmute? I can't hear you.
Thought I did. Sorry. I found the questions both hard and easy. It was interesting.
Mhm. Kind of like peeling layers off an onion, huh? Or what was that movie? I think it was Shrek. The layers of parfait, right? Anybody else? All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicki, for being here.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
You're welcome.
From me too.
Yeah.
Some of that can be pretty hard to look at, can't it?
It is. Actually, this is going to be a very good segue into Trisha's thing next week on listening. So.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to say adieu.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Take care.
I need to run as well, so I'm gonna drop.
Ah,
See y'all next week.
yeah. Okay, does anybody else have anything for the good? Trisha is going to be our speaker next week, and it's on listening. It's a wonderful chapter. This coming week, you are going to be going through the steps of humility, and it's kind of one of the core teachings, is the core teaching of Benedict spirituality. So really pay attention to it. Does anybody else have anything to say before we pray ourselves out? We're getting finished early today.
What was the Colossians that she read?
Ooh, I have no idea. What,
Colossians
you remember?
3?
Good question.
The
Huh?
Colossians verses. Where was that from?
You can go back and watch this video when Pat
Oh,
puts it up,
okay,
and
of
then
course
you'll
I
be
have.
able to go
Yeah,
rewind it.
I didn't write it down,
It's-
so I really can't tell
I
you.
didn't either.
It's 12 to 17.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Becky.
See you next week.
Oh,
Is that
okay.
it?
Okay, let me pray you out and we'll go. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together. Thank you for letting us look inside ourselves and seeing who we are and where we're going and what it is you are calling us to do. Sometimes it's a long and struggling pathway, but frequently, if we look to you, the light shines and we can follow more clearly. Be with us as we reach out to others and become that listening ear and that gentle hand that's needed. Ask this all in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks.
Thank you, Deacon Pat, for organizing and everything.
Oh,
Yes.
you're welcome. Thank you. This was wonderful. I can't wait for next week. It has been, it's been wonderful, and it's wonderful to see all of you here, and I'm really excited about your adventure. So I will say good night, good day to you, and we
A good week.
we'll be back to normal time next week. So
Okay.
yeah, this was just Vicki had that other thing to go to, and we wanted to get her, so that was the only reason for this. Okay, and we will see you all later.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Have a good week,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.